Hola, bienvenidos y gracias por estar con nosotros en un nuevo programa de El Mundo.
Hello and welcome to our show. Thanks for being with us. And this time we'd like to talk to Dr. Michael Leitman about impulsive decision making. How can we take decisions so they won't be impulsive? This is something very relevant to all of us. It's really very current. Dr. Leitman, thank you for being with us. I am with you. First thing, we'd like to start with the definition of an impulse. What is an impulse from the perspective of the wisdom of Kabbalah? That we take our decisions not through the mind, through the intellect, but that we pass them only through the nervous system, only through our emotion. And if the emotion controls the thought, the intellect, then for us it's a problem. Or to the contrary, if the intellect controls, rules without any emotion, that's also a problem. So in the communication between us, we have to always use, or in our communication, we always have to use the intellect and the emotion together for them to build the conduit of connections between us in such a way that we'll be content with one another. But for this, we have to exactly know how does each of us express his intellect and emotion on the one hand, with the intellect and emotion from the other side, for there to be a good both emotional and also intellectual communication. How is it possible to know that there is balance between these two aspects? For this, I have to be connected with the other person that I'm talking to, in mind and heart, so to speak, and to try and pass on to them my concepts, opinion, message in such a way that the other person will also get the same impression in mind and heart as I do. Is there some kind of danger in taking impulsive decisions? This is a completely different topic. These are the decisions that a person takes and makes out of the many options and possibilities that he has. And there too, the mind and heart have to be balanced. Are there cultural differences in relation to that? Sometimes you mention that, suppose in Latin America, emotions are taken more emotionally than in other places. The decision-making is more emotional, so versus intellect. Are there cultural differences? Of course, in each and every nation, and between nations and cultures, and even within every person. And that's how it is. Northern Europe, they're colder and more intellectual, and Southern Europe, they're a bit hotter, more emotional. Suppose North America and Canada, that's one thing, versus South America, which is more emotional. This is how that's kind of common, even though there is already a mixture and the division is no longer exactly precise. But still, there's a division between the south, that's hot, warm, and the north, that is colder, where there is more intellect in decision-making and where there is less intellect and more emotion. To what measure is the decision supposed to be rational? When they're balanced. And also they have to be balanced according to the object, according to who am I turning to? A person, the world, even to an animal, to my cat when I talk to it. It doesn't matter. I also have to balance out my intellect and emotion in such a way that I will pass on my my opinion in such a way that it will be clear. The time that it takes to analyze a decision, does it determine the outcome? Of course. When I build the message and I wrap my message emotionally and intellectually as a package, as a message wrapped up as a package to someone, then he'll correctly understand the message as it came out of me and was accepted by them, the way that other person perceives it, up to the point where all of his senses will receive it correctly. Maybe 90% of my message was intellect and 10% emotion. But the person that I'm turning to, from the 90% of my intellect can grasp only 5%, and from my emotion, he's willing to perceive more, but I have no more. This is what I passed on to him. And therefore there is lack of direct communication here. But there has to be an adapter between us that adjusts what I mean and what he means, and what kind of intellect, how should the intellect and emotion be balanced. About the balance that you're mentioning, how to take a decision, or to what measure does the decision making, is it considered impulsive or not? This is a psychological matter. It's a matter of preparation. And there are many such schools, courses, starting with teachers and up to hiring politicians, how to talk to a public, how to talk to a person in person. It's an entire science. I'm not engaged in that. I think that it could only stand in my way if I'll be too engaged in it. I have to try in general to understand who am I turning to, and then to turn. And usually, in my relations with the public, I don't take the others into consideration, meaning I know what I have to pass on, and what I pass on, this is the way it has to be accepted, perceived, or grasped. Maybe it sounds kind of like dictatorship, but in my profession, this is how it is. So exactly about this, I wanted to ask about the personal aspect. How do you make decisions? What criteria do you take into consideration? Usually I take into consideration the well-being of the person that I'm turning to, and the way I understand what is to his benefit. It's like I don't turn to a child the way he understands I'm supposed to turn to him. But I choose in what way, to what intensity, and do I turn to him. And in advance, of course, I want to reach some kind of response. And sometimes it's the other way around. I don't pay attention to his response. I only pay attention to my message for it to be perceived. A Kabbalist is more impulsive than an ordinary person. In many cases, he's very impulsive. Yes. Why? It's at the speed of light, really so. Because he can't hold back the intensity of the light that's working in him that he has to pass on to another person. It's not always that way. A Kabbalist, he's a human being. He's not made out of steel and transmitters. He's not made out of wires, but is made out of nerves. And especially that he has to take into consideration these two existential levels, this world and the spiritual upper world. And probably that he wants to pass on to his partner, the person that he's conversing with, to pass on a different level of connection. And he can't stand that his conversation partner is in some kind of lowly base, earthly kinds of communication, and doesn't want to rise above that. So there's a kind of disconnection made between them. This is how a Kabbalist feels, that he has to relate, and he can't do anything about it. If not, he simply cools things down, moves away a bit. What is the place of remorse, regret, after there was an impulsive decision made? Is there a place for regret? Regret is taken only in relation to the way the message was conveyed, communicated, but not the message itself, meaning the only problem is external. That suppose that one person talks too openly to another person. But that you have in everything, especially in governments. The way they talk inside, inside their decisions, inside their talks. There you have cries and whatnot. Afterwards, it comes out in a nice, clean way to a more and more external audience. Same thing here. It's like also in every family, between husband and wife. So here we have to understand that all in all, we're human beings, and Kabbalists all the more. If an ordinary person, all in all, what does he take into consideration? The relations in the family, place of work, things like that, shopping. Earthly matters. Then a Kabbalist has much greater, I'd say, eternal problems that are above time and space. And therefore, his message has to be more complex and maybe sharper. What are the aspects in life that force you to think more about the decision, and under what circumstances are you supposed to work more according to the impulses, your impulses? I think that it can't really influence a Kabbalist that much. He always takes into consideration only the spiritual outcomes. And if to that you can connect some kind of corporeal relations, order of work, actions, no, okay. But if not, he does not take that into consideration. He doesn't. He takes into consideration only the spiritual results that are born as a result of the message that he gives. In order to close our show, can you give some kind of a message about this? And then on our next show, we'll talk about this some more. But how do you summarize impulsive decision-making? We have to understand the audience. We have to understand man. We have to understand who are we talking to, always. We also have to take into consideration the circumstances and states that we're in, and to try to grasp that of the other person. And sometimes it's so that I can't always understand what he says, and he can't always understand everything that I say. But nonetheless, let's all the time try to be in the direction of mutual supplementation and completion. Thank you very much, Dr. Lightman. Thank you. Until our next show.